Hello, everybody. It's Crescent Dragonwagon. Once again, we are going to begin the first section of reading The Man with the Purple Eyes. Now, as you may know, if you've been with us before on these readings, this is our 10th week of doing nightly read-alouds, with the exception of last night when we had some technical difficulties. You'll know that I read a children's book every night, and it's either one that I wrote or one that this beautiful lady, my late mother, Charlotte Zolotow, wrote. And The Man with the Purple Eyes, tonight's story, is one of my mother's books, but it's much longer than most of her books, so we have divided it up into several chapters. And we started last night and were interrupted, and I apologize to those of you who were frustrated by it, and hopefully we are back on track tonight. With the help of my friend Sweetie Berry, we are taping this one, not with Facebook Live, but in another way, and we'll see if you get it and enjoy it. Now, this book, The Man with the Purple Eyes, is very different from most of my mother's books. Most of her books just have 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe 4 sentences on each page along with a picture. We call them illustrations, as we've talked about before. Artists can work in painting and drawing and clay and rock and all kinds of different ways, but for a painter or an artist who does drawings or paintings or pictures that go with words, he or she is called an illustrator, because they have to look at those words and see what story do they see, and they add they choose what you're going to look at and what you can start picturing from the words that the writer gave. Now, this book of Charlotte's is unusual because it doesn't have very many pictures at all. It's mostly words. So the pictures that you see in your mind or in your heart as things make you feel. You'll remember things from your past that will come to mind. And so the book is different from most of Charlotte's because it's longer, because there are fewer pictures, and also most of Charlotte's books are very much in the real world, the recognizable world. Spring, summer, winter, fall, puppies, kittens, brothers and sisters. But 2 of her books are have something that doesn't happen all the time. One of them, and if you got here, you can get to the other stories we've read. In her book, Mr. Rabbit and the Lovely Present, a little girl has a friendship with a large rabbit who helps her solve a problem. And in this one, in The Man with the Purple Eyes, the little girl, whose name in this one is Anna, she has a difficult problem too. And is he a man? Is he an ancient god? We don't know. Does she actually see him, or does she make him up out of her longing and wanting? We don't know. But in this case, this is only the second other book that Charlotte did that really is a world that is not something that would happen every day, that is a little bit more imaginary than that. And when I was a little kid, The Man with the Purple Eyes was one of my favorite books because most of her other books were very, very short and very simple and pictures to the words. But this one was, as I saw it as a kid myself, this was a real story where a lot happened. And so I loved this one when I was young. And we will start reading it today, and we will read it over, I think we said 4 times. So there'll be 4, in effect, chapters. So this is chapter 1. And my dear listener, you know I love to hear stories and read stories. Read them both to myself and read them out loud to you. I love to have other people read stories to me, and it is my privilege to read The Man with the Purple Eyes, Part 1, to you tonight. Hello, everybody. I am Crescent Dragonwagon, and I have been reading some children's books out loud. I say some children's books, but they're children's books either that I wrote or that this lady, my mother, Charlotte Zolotow. Some people think we look alike. Some people think we look differently. She wrote many, many, many books for children. So in this period, when I'm reading books aloud every night, for those of you that might be at home and feel in need of a story, I'm reading either one of Charlotte's books or mine. And tonight's book, which is The Man with the Purple Eyes, tonight's book was written by my mother. Now, if you've been listening along with us, many of my mother's books are very short, but this one is a little longer, so we're going to read this in 3 or 4 pieces together. And so here we go with The Man with the Purple Eyes. It's unusual for my mother's books, as it really is a story with chapters and mythology and magic, very different from the others of hers that we've been reading. Also fewer pictures, but I'll hold up pictures when we get to them. And the illustrations were done by Joe Lasker. The Man with the Purple Eyes by Charlotte Zolotow, with illustrations by Joe Lasker. Anna Martin was a strangely beautiful child. She had shining black straight hair and a small thin face. Her eyes were an unusual shade of silver green, the silver green of tall grass when the wind sweeps across the fields. Until 2 years ago, Anna and her mother and father lived in the country. They lived in a small house surrounded by hills and trees. The sky curved over it and away into the distance as far as one could see. Anna was used to the great stretching beauty, the space and fields and meadows of the country, and because she loved it so, it was especially hard for her to live in the city now. This was a hot summer day. Anna was sitting in her bedroom, looking out of her window onto the narrow pavement below. The sound of horns honking, of riveting from the next street where men were repairing a broken sewer, the screech of cars turning the sharp corner, seemed to her today noisier and uglier than ever. She longed for the country with its meadows and fields of wild flowers. And oh, how she longed for her father to be well again. For part of her hatred of the city was that her father, her kind, soft-spoken father, with his wonderful sense of fun, would never have fallen so ill if he had not come here. It was 2 years ago that he had come to work in television, where his special knowledge of the old legends had been needed. This knowledge was very great. Indeed, the work closest to his heart was a book called Myths and Legends of the Gods, and it was to earn enough money to take off time from teaching and finish writing it that he had agreed in the first place to come to the city. He had agreed to be the authority behind a unique television quiz show where his immense scholarship in this field made him invaluable. His plan had been to leave Anna and her mother behind in the little house at the foot of the mountains that they all loved so well. His contract called for 3 years of his time, but it paid him so much he would then be able to come home, take a year off from work, and finish writing his book. That was what he wanted to do more than anything else in the world. At first he came home from the city for weekends. Then the pressure of his work there grew greater, and he was unable to come home even then. He worked harder and harder. He missed Anna and her mother. He missed the clean, sweet country air. He missed the mountains and the fields and Anna's mother's care. Without her to look after him, he often forgot to eat and often forgot to sleep. He had grown thinner and paler and became, at last, very ill indeed. So ill he had to go into a hospital in the city for a total rest. Even home couldn't help him now. He needed the special kind of cure only one of the finest sanatoriums in the world could give him. And on this particular morning, he had been in it for almost a year. What a long year it had been. Anna's mother had leased the house in the country to a family named Vargos. She said they could have it for a year, and they agreed to take it for that, on the chance that if the Martins could not come back at the end of 1 year, the Vargases could have the house for 2 years more. Then Anna and her mother had taken this small apartment in the city, where they could be near Anna's father and see him every day. And every day that he was well enough, they did go to visit him. Anna was waiting for her mother now. She thought ahead to the long day in front of them. She thought of the dank-smelling subway trip uptown. There you can see them waiting by the subway track for the train. She thought of the dank-smelling subway trip uptown. She thought of her father, still pale and ill. She thought of the sadness in her mother's face when they left him in the bare, square sanatorium room when the visit was over. She thought of the long, noisy subway trip home, the walk back up the hot, dusty street, the last effort of climbing upstairs to this small, cramped apartment in time for her mother to make dinner. They would eat dinner, the two of them alone, Anna and her mother, with the silence of her father's absence, like a live thing in the room. Suddenly, Anna was filled with such longing for the country, for her hills and her home and the happy times the three of them had had there, that she had to fight back the tears burning in her eyes. She knew she must not cry. It was hard enough for her father lying in that hospital room all day, and for her mother worrying about them, without Anna's making it worse by letting them see how much she wanted to be back in the country with them both again. Oh, how she longed for the clean, good air, the long, lovely roads, the fields and meadows full of wildflowers, vivid and fragrant and beautiful everywhere you looked. Anna loved wildflowers the way some children love dolls or toys or their pets. In the spring, she searched in the woods along the brook for the first mayflowers and earth-smelling wood violets hidden in their dark, green, heart-shaped leaves. In the summer, she loved the white Queen Anne's lace that grew like a giant snowflake in the fields. She loved daisies and shiny buttercups and the light and dark yellow of the butter and eggs weed. And as the summer wore on, she looked for the orange daylilies and the blue gentian that grew like fragments of sky in the tall grass. In the fall, she picked huge bunches of purple wild aster and sprays of goldenrod to stand in front of their fireplace at home. In the country, on a hot day like this, Anna would have spent the morning wandering through the meadows, listening to the hum of the huge golden bumblebees bumbling and buzzing in the fragrance of the purple clover. There she is, lying down in the field, just thinking her thoughts, listening to the bees buzz. She closed her burning eyes and covered them with her hands. In the darkness, she tried to imagine she was still living in their country house. She tried to believe she was sitting in her own room at home with the white curtains blowing softly, gently, in the summer wind from the meadow. She tried to imagine that downstairs in his study, her father was at work on his book. She tried to imagine that in a few minutes her mother's voice would call her to come down and set the table on the shady side porch where the three of them would eat their lunch. There would be tomatoes, warm from the sunny garden, and milk and eggs and cheese from the farm down the road. But instead of her mother's voice calling her from downstairs, she heard that voice softly by her ear. Anna. Anna opened her eyes, and her mother was standing beside her in the stuffy city bedroom. The sounds from the street below were as noisy as ever. The hot city air was city air. Anna, her mother said, I hope you don't mind being by yourself this morning. I'm afraid I'd better go alone to see Father. Dr. Barley said he was rather poorly this morning. He advised me to just drop in alone briefly until he feels better. She put her hand lightly on Anna's shoulder. Maybe while I'm out, you can think of something to do for his birthday next Saturday. She stroked Anna's black hair, following the little girl's gaze down to the busy street below. She sighed. You're a good girl, Anna, she said. I know how hard all this is for you, and you never complain. She leaned over and kissed Anna. Mrs. Peters is across the hall if you need her. I'll be home as quickly as possible, dear. Suddenly, Anna had a thought, an idea. Mother, she said, would it be all right if I go out on a little walk while you're away? I'll tell Mrs. Peters when I leave, and I won't cross any streets. Just walk around the block or something and come back again. Anna had a plan. Anna had an idea. Her mother hesitated. Well, all right, she said finally, but be careful and don't stay out too long. So, thank you once again for dropping in, my dear friend and neighbor, maybe neighbor across the street, maybe neighbor across the world. And speaking of dropping in, guess who joined us to finish this reading?
Hi,
This is
Mark Graff.
the one and only Mark Graff. And we had given him a night off since it was more words and he had other things to do, but he couldn't resist coming back in. How come you couldn't resist it?
Well, this book I've been taking this graduate course in the works of Charlotte Zolotow and Crescent Dragonwagon. And, what is this? This is almost 60 stories now, but this one is unique. It's longer. It's really not your basic simple story in any way. It's a little novel, short novel.
It is a novel. Yeah. It is a short novel. But why did
And
that
it's
make
a fantasy too.
But why did that make you want to drop in? And could you just not stay away from us? Me and your fans out there who've been enjoying your comments and carryings on as we walk through all these stories. Or it could just be because we have a way that we say goodbye together every time.
Yeah. I want to be part of that too.
You want to be part of that?
Sure, yeah.
So are you guys ready to let us go for this evening? And then we'll see you, or I'll see you, and who knows, you might see him at the end of it. And certainly when we're through with this longer book and we're back to the short ones, then Mark always steps in to lend me a hand because it is complicated when we're doing it on Facebook for me to hold it up and read it at the same time. You wouldn't think it would be simple, but it is simple. So he comes in and works his technological magic as I'm reading. And see, he's already working it in a way. So, anything else you want to say about this book before we say goodbye?
Yeah,
to everybody?
just that one section where her father takes a turn for the worse, and the
Oh,
mother.
they've only heard the first part. Don't give it away.
No. But she says, the daughter says, "Is it all right if I go out for a walk?" But the idea is the mother's going to go to the hospital by herself.
Yeah.
Now I have been to the hospital. I have sat at people's bedsides, and as an adult, I found that ominous. That the doctor said maybe it's just better if you come without the girl.
And the meaning of ominous?
It worries me. It worries me that the doctor told the mother not to bring the little girl. That sounds like it could be bad news coming. So to
Which
me,
in a
it's
story probably means you want to read it to find out what happens next.
yeah, I want everything to be okay. But it's.
You do
It
want
was a
everything to be
cliffhanger,
okay.
right? It's a cliffhanger. So, but if she's going to go out and go for a walk, which sounds like a good thing to do. But the fact that the doctor said that to her worried me.
Well, we don't want our readers to worry. But we don't want to tell you what happens either.
No.
Because it's a surprise.
Yeah.
So in order for you to not be worried, but to still be curious, we will send something that will make it easier to wait until tomorrow. How about that?
Mm.
We have sent it often, but it's different every time. You ready?
I'm ready.
I will create it and Mark will deliver it. Here we go. Did you get that? Like a little butterfly landing on your nose, maybe. Tip of your head. I hope you did. Goodbye. See you tomorrow.